All right, good morning. Here I am, live from California. It is a beautiful day, and check out my view in my hotel. It's awesome. You can see the pier like a couple blocks down, so it was a great way to wake up. I took a little walk to the breakfast place and had a lovely breakfast, and now I'm back at the hotel getting ready for the day. So, anyways, I'm here to join the summit this afternoon and talk about dyslexia in Kentucky. But a couple people who have been following weren't exactly sure what dyslexia is, and so I thought that I would give a refresher course for anybody that's kind of tracking these live feeds and just wanting to know more. So, as many of you know, I have taught for several years, and then I started to get my PhD in Education and Social Change from Bellarmine University. And I had to pick an area of change that I was interested in. So my professor, Dr. Kathy Cooter, suggested that I look into dyslexia. And the more I read about it, the more I was shocked, because I had been teaching at that point for probably about 7 years, and I had no idea about what dyslexia truly was and what it meant. And so the more I read, the more I couldn't get enough information. I just kept looking for more and more and more. So that brought me to what my dissertation research was. And that was teacher knowledge of dyslexia and what's the best way to get teachers to understand what dyslexia really is. And so I'm kind of towards the tail end of that. I've really enjoyed doing that research, and I'll share that another time. But anyway, so what dyslexia is a neurological reading difference. It's the way that you were born, the way that your brain was created, and it's normal. A lot of people have it. They say about 1 in 5 people have dyslexia or have this reading difference. And that statistic can change depending on what research you're reading, but the most recent webinar that I attended by Dr. Sally Shaywitz, she very much emphasized that it is truly 1 in 5 people. So a lot of people have dyslexia, and it's fine, it's normal, it's okay to have dyslexia, but we need to be teaching strategies to help the reading difference and help them learn to read the right way. So let's talk about what the brain does and how it's reading different. So our normal reader, when they've looked under an fMRI machine, they can see the areas of your brain that kind of light up when you read. So an average reader has like 3 little areas in the left side of their brain that light up, and all 3 areas work together to understand that word that you read, to decode it, to associate it with a memory, whatever that might be, and to read the word fluently. If you have dyslexia, they have found that only one of those 3 areas actually are firing and lighting up when you're reading. So you don't use all 3 of the right areas. So when you only have the one area lighting up, you might be able to sound out each letter, but you're not able to put the letters together to make a word. So you might have a student who reads at and says take, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? But they remembered the t that they said at the end, and so they guessed at a letter because those areas weren't working together. So they were able to sound the letters out, but they weren't able to put the letters together in a word because the areas in the brain that you use to read aren't working for those students. So it's important that when we teach, we're teaching ways to help that neurological pathway change and the areas in the brain work harder and work together and start lighting up and firing. So, you know, teachers are like brain surgeons. I think they should get paid like brain surgeons, but they don't do that yet. So anyways, another fact about dyslexia is it's genetic. So if you have it in your family, there's a good chance that there's somebody else that will most likely have this reading difference. And like I said, it's the way that your brain was made. It's nothing crazy. It's just the way that we were created. And it can be changed. You can start doing interventions that will help that area in the brain start lighting up. So a lot of people call it a reading difference instead of a reading disability, because that's what it is. It starts as a difference, and if you're using the right interventions, your brain can be adjusted to be similar to just your average reader. Another huge misconception is that it's reading backwards. So people with dyslexia see a B as a D or a T or a Q, all of those letters that they call reversals. Well, it's not really reading it backwards. Your brain sees it the same, but by the time the pathway takes the pathway over to the area of the brain that's analyzing that letter, it may have flipped. So think about this. Some letters have their own footprint. So the letter K, if you put the letter K on a dice and you rolled it to your friend, no matter how that K got to your friend would probably be able to say it's a K because it has its own footprint. No matter which way you turn that K, it still looks like a K. But if you wrote the letter B on a dice and you rolled that to a friend, they might not be able to guess if that's a B because it might have been adjusted in the way that it went from you to your friend. And so it's kind of like that. It's kind of if you're looking at a letter and you read it in your head, by the time it gets over to the area of your brain that's analyzing it, it may have adjusted in the brain. So the eyes are seeing it the same, but the way that the brain is analyzing that letter sometimes flips it around. So the letters that don't have their own footprints sometimes can be misread. And that's kind of where that misconception comes from. Another huge misconception in our field is the age that you can diagnose dyslexia. So a lot of people say you don't know a student is dyslexic until they're 7 or they're in the 3rd grade, and that's not true either. There's a lot of characteristics that you can start seeing early on that can be red flags, and guess what? Interventions can be done for anybody, for a dyslexic student or somebody who just is your average reader. All interventions are good for all readers. So if you suspect that you might have a young one who has dyslexia or might have dyslexia, go ahead and start working on those teaching strategies because it can't hurt. So that's just another little fact for you. And really, I mean, there's a lot of facts, but the basic facts that I wanted you to know are just that it is truly a neurological difference. It's the way that your brain is made that when you're born, and there are ways to help change that neurological pathway. So that's what we're here today going to work on later today. We're going to work on, what can we do in Kentucky to start recognizing dyslexia, to start working with our students? What interventions can we make sure we're putting into place? And then how can we get the knowledge to the teachers and the administrators and the districts and everybody else? Because the misconceptions need to be changed and everybody needs to understand what is this reading difference. Right now I think it's kind of shied away from, and so we're trying to bring it out, bring it into the public. Let's talk about it. Let's do something about it. So I don't know. Keep you posted as we meet this afternoon and what we're coming up with. All right, thanks for joining.